Today, we're going to discuss the deceptive nature of sugar, using various examples and illustrations. Isn't it fascinating to explore the influence of sweetness in our language and culture? Sweetness has become intertwined with our expressions and emotions. When something wonderful happens, we often exclaim, "Oh, how sweet." We use endearing terms like "sweetie" or "honey" for our loved ones. Even grandma asks for a kiss by saying, "Give me some sugar." When we find a great deal, we call it a sweet deal. And after getting married, couples embark on a honeymoon, a time when they indulge in sweets. The fondness for sweetness is deeply ingrained in our survival instincts. The taste of sweetness is hardwired into our brains, specifically in the reward centers. Our bodies are designed to appreciate and crave sweet flavors because they help raise blood sugar levels. This rise in blood sugar prompts the release of insulin, a hormone responsible for storing fat. In the past, this mechanism served our ancestors well during times of feast and famine. They would store excess food as fat to sustain them during times of scarcity. However, the circumstances have drastically changed. When was the last time you experienced a famine? Grocery stores are filled with an abundance of sweet and processed foods, available year-round without any shortage. In fact, the sweetest and most processed foods are often the cheapest options. We now have access to thousands of different sugary products, altering the rules of our evolutionary survival mechanism. Let's explore some common misconceptions about sugar. Natural versus processed sugar. While sugar occurs naturally in foods like fruits and honey, the quantity and form in which we consume it have changed significantly. Our ancestors consumed sugar in small quantities, packed within foods that contained other components like fat, fiber, and cells. However, modern food processing has refined and isolated sugar, adding it to numerous products. As a result, we now have unlimited access to sugar in various forms, consuming an average of 126 grams per person per day in the United States alone. This is equivalent to approximately 30 teaspoons of sugar daily, far exceeding what our bodies need. Blaming fat. For several decades, fat has been wrongly blamed for various health conditions, including obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. The truth is that high levels of insulin, resulting from excessive sugar consumption, are the primary cause of these conditions. Fat, on its own, does not stimulate insulin production. This misconception has allowed food manufacturers to create low-fat, high-sugar products, which can be marketed as guilt-free and heart-healthy. However, these products often leave us feeling unsatisfied and hungry shortly after consumption. Complex carbs versus added sugar. While many people recognize the harms of added sugars, they often overlook the similarities between complex carbohydrates and sugar. Complex carbs, which are often promoted as healthy, have addictive properties similar to sugar. They both spike blood sugar levels and trigger pleasure receptors in the brain. Comfort foods like mac and cheese and sandwiches, which are high in both sugar and carbs, exemplify this connection. It's crucial to understand that carbohydrates, in general, break down into simple sugars, affecting our blood sugar levels. High fructose corn syrup. High fructose corn syrup, HFCS, is often demonized as the worst sweetener. While it is indeed a less desirable option compared to sugar, labeling it as the ultimate villain can create a misleading hierarchy among sweeteners. HFCS is worse than sugar because it spikes blood sugar faster and overwhelms the liver, leading to fat accumulation. However, both sugar and HFCS contribute to various metabolic syndromes and should be limited in our diets. Net carbs is a concept used in nutrition to estimate the impact of carbohydrates on blood sugar levels. It is particularly relevant for individuals following low-carb or ketogenic diets. The idea behind net carbs is to differentiate between the total carbohydrates in a food item and the carbohydrates that have a significant impact on blood sugar. When we consume carbohydrates, our body breaks them down into glucose, which is the primary source of energy for our cells. However, not all carbohydrates are digested and absorbed in the same way. Some carbohydrates, like fiber and certain sugar alcohols, have minimal or no impact on blood sugar levels. To calculate net carbs, you subtract the grams of fiber and sugar alcohols from the total carbohydrates in a food item. The rationale is that fiber passes through the digestive system without being fully absorbed and therefore doesn't contribute significantly to blood sugar levels. Similarly, certain sugar alcohols, although they have a sweet taste, are not fully metabolized by the body and have a reduced impact on blood sugar compared to regular sugar. By subtracting fiber and sugar alcohols from total carbs, you get the net carbs, which represent the carbohydrates that are likely to have a significant impact on blood sugar levels. This concept is especially useful for people who are monitoring their carbohydrate intake, such as those managing diabetes or following specific dietary approaches. It's important to note that the concept of net carbs is not universally agreed upon, and there are different interpretations and calculations used by different sources and diet plans. Additionally, the impact of sugar alcohols on blood sugar can vary depending on the type and individual response. When using net carbs as a guide, it's still important to consider the overall quality and nutritional value of the food. Opting for whole, unprocessed foods and paying attention to other nutrients, such as protein, fats, vitamins, and minerals, is crucial for a balanced and healthy diet. As always, consulting with a healthcare professional or registered dietitian is recommended to determine the best approach to carbohydrate intake based on individual health goals and needs. Let's discuss the differences between high fructose corn syrup, sugar, and their effects on the body. It's important to understand why one is considered slightly worse and why it ultimately doesn't make a significant difference. Sugar, which is a 6-carbon ring, is linked to a 5-carbon ring called fructose. Enzymes in our body split these molecules, resulting in glucose and fructose. Normally, when we consume sugar, we start with an equal amount of glucose and fructose, leading to 50% glucose and 50% fructose in our bodies. However, high fructose corn syrup is already pre-split during its production process. This means there's no delay before the glucose and fructose molecules enter our system. Consequently, even though high fructose corn syrup contains slightly less glucose, the glucose is immediately available and rapidly increases blood sugar levels. Typically, glucose is responsible for spiking blood sugar, but high fructose corn syrup can spike it even faster due to the immediate availability of glucose. High fructose corn syrup consists of 55% fructose and 45% glucose. Fructose, although it doesn't spike blood sugar as much, can only be processed in the liver. This can overwhelm the liver and quickly turn into fat, leading to a fatty liver, visceral fat accumulation, and various metabolic syndrome diseases. Therefore, high fructose corn syrup is considered slightly worse than sugar due to its higher fructose content and its rapid impact on blood sugar. However, it's crucial to note that labeling one as good compared to the other is misleading. Both high fructose corn syrup and sugar have negative health effects, and the small degree of difference between them is negligible. Comparing them is like debating which mass murderer is slightly better, which is nonsensical. They are both harmful to our health. Regarding line number 5, it concerns the marketing of net carbs on nutrition labels. Normally, we deduct the fiber content from the total carbohydrates to calculate the net carbs. For example, if a product has 14 grams of total carbohydrates and 3 grams of fiber, the net carbs would be 11 g, 14 grams to 3 grams. However, according to food labeling regulations, sugar alcohols can also be deducted from the net carb count. This means that sugar alcohols are not included in the net carb calculation. Consequently, a product may claim to have 0 grams of sugar when sugar alcohols are present. The impact of sugar alcohols on blood glucose levels varies depending on the type. Let's explore some popular sugar alcohols and compare them to sugar. Maltitol, for example, has 67% of the calories of sugar, 54% of the blood sugar impact, and is about 75% as sweet as sugar. When maltitol is used in candies and chocolates, slightly more of it is needed to achieve the same sweetness and caloric impact as sugar. Xylitol has similar calories to sugar, but has virtually no glycemic index impact on blood sugar. It is about 100% as sweet as sugar, so using the same amount as sugar would have minimal blood sugar effects. Sorbitol, another sugar alcohol, has the same calorie impact as sugar, but only 14% of the blood sugar impact. However, it is only 60% as sweet as sugar, so larger quantities would be needed to achieve the desired sweetness. Most sugar alcohols function similarly to sugar and have similar effects, although they are excluded from carbohydrate and sugar content on labels. They can cause gastrointestinal discomfort, act as laxatives, cause gas, and lead to diarrhea. It is advisable to consume sugar alcohols in moderation and avoid excessive consumption. Erythritol stands out among sugar alcohols because it is absorbed differently. Although 90% of erythritol is quickly absorbed into the bloodstream, it is not metabolized by the body. The remaining 10% that reaches the gut is not significantly metabolized by gut bacteria. As a result, erythritol has close to 0% impact on blood sugar and only 2% of the blood sugar impact of regular sugar. It measures up well in terms of sweetness. Among the sugar alcohols, erythritol is generally considered the best option, but excessive consumption of any non-metabolized substance may have unforeseen consequences. An example related to line number 6 involves dried fruit, such as pineapple. If the water is extracted from pineapple and the concentrated fruit is added to a product, it does not have to be labeled as added sugars. However, the sugar content remains the same, and the concentrated fruit can still lead to an overdose of sugar and insulin, contributing to fat storage. Despite the deception and misinformation surrounding sugars, there is hope as awareness grows. The USDA recommends consuming less than 50 grams of added sugar per day, while the American Heart Association suggests aiming for 25 grams. Ideally, an average intake of less than 10 grams of added sugar would be beneficial, considering that it should not be consumed daily. Occasional indulgences are acceptable, but it's essential to limit sugar intake. However, this poses a threat to processed food manufacturers, as their goal is to sell more food. To overcome this, they have resorted to using alternative names for sugar on labels, such as fruit juice concentrate, evaporated fruit juice, brown rice syrup, or agave nectar. These names may sound appealing or healthy, but they are essentially different forms of sugar or high fructose corn syrup. To deceive consumers further, manufacturers may misspell or use brand names for sugar substitutes. For instance, misspelling xylo as xylo, or creating brand names like Lycosan or G-Lucid for different forms of sugar. With time, they may become even more innovative and incorporate brand names directly on the labels. It's important to remain informed and read labels carefully. Foods with fewer ingredients and simpler labels, like meat or broccoli, are generally better options. In conclusion, understanding the differences between high fructose corn syrup, sugar, and their effects on the body is essential for making informed dietary choices. While high fructose corn syrup is considered slightly worse due to its higher fructose content and rapid impact on blood sugar, both high fructose corn syrup and sugar have negative health effects. Sugar alcohols, although they may have different caloric and blood sugar impacts, should be consumed in moderation due to potential gastrointestinal side effects. Additionally, the deceptive marketing tactics used to disguise sugars under different names highlight the importance of being vigilant while reading labels and opting for whole, unprocessed foods whenever possible.